Hey everybody, and welcome back to my channel. I am so excited to be filming my first wrap-up here on the channel. I am doing my December wrap-up as well as one book from November that I didn't get to talk about in December and I don't quite know how to feel, and you know, sometimes you just need to like get it out. So I'm excited to be sharing 5 books with you. 4 of them I have in physical copy and 1 of them I read as an audiobook. So let's get into it. Alright, so first book that I want to talk about is The God Game, and that is by Danny Tobey, and this is the book that I did finish up in November technically. This book is coming out this month here in January, and this is possibly one of the most difficult to rate books that I have ever read. So I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but I teetered back and forth between this being a 2-star book and a 5-star book. And that has never happened to me before. Normally, I'm really easily able to tell you whether or not I liked a book, and this one just made me feel so many emotions that I wasn't quite sure. I kid you not, I told my husband at least 3 times while I was reading, I hate this book, I'm gonna stop. And then he'd look over 20 minutes later and I was still voraciously reading it because I just couldn't put it down. Like, I came so close to throwing this book against a wall. So, The God Game by Danny Tobey follows our main character Charlie as well as a bunch of his friends who have gotten themselves involved in a AI video game called The God Game, and it's run by God, who is an AI that sort of controls so many different factors that no computer should probably have access to, although let's not think about whether or not they do because that's terrifying. But things like being able to access ATM accounts and online diaries and photos and videos, and even when your computer isn't turned on, they were watching. It's terrifying. So essentially, it follows Charlie and his friends as they sort of navigate this game, and in the game, if you followed the directions of God, you were rewarded. So if they asked you to go do a mission, go slay a minotaur, go do this or that, and you were successful, maybe money would shoot out of an ATM, or you would get help on a test, or things like that. But as this game progresses, they start to realize that not everything is like as it seems, and there's a lot more sort of like evil or bad stuff going on, and that the intent behind this game might not be good. My main like favorite parts about this book were the fact that like it was just impossible to put down. I read this entire, and this is a big book, like this book is I think like 500 pages. Yeah, it's 450 pages, and I read it in 2 days. Like, it just grabs you and will not let go. So I really felt that the author did a really incredible job with pacing, because there were a number of times that I started to feel like I was frustrated with the back and forth of the plot, and Tobey does a really good job of sort of like pushing you to that breaking point and then like yanking you right back in. And I think that was one of the like real strengths of this book, is that it frustrated you but also wouldn't let you stop reading. The main drawback of this book, the reason that I ended up giving it 4 stars instead of 5, is that I didn't feel like I could relate or care about a single character. Every single one of these characters was irredeemable in my mind. I couldn't connect to them, I didn't like them, and by the end of it I didn't really care what happened to them. But luckily the writing in the book was so incredible, and like the plot was so well woven together that I ended up finishing it and giving it 4 stars. The second book that I read this month was Scarlet by Marissa Meyer, and that is the second book in the Lunar Chronicles series. The first one is called Cinder. I'm listening to these books on audiobook, and I think that so far the reader is doing an incredible job of distinguishing between our different voices and the different characters in the book and really bringing them to life. In the second one, if you haven't read the first one, I won't give any spoilers, but it's following a different main character. We still have our main characters from the first book, but we're introducing a new set of characters that will eventually sort of meet paths with our main characters from Cinder. And without spoiling anything from the first book, it's just an incredible continuation. I love these new characters. I think I might even like Scarlet better than I liked Cinder. As of recording this video, I'm in the middle of Cress, which is the third book. The first one, Cinder, is a loose retelling of Cinderella. Scarlet, the second one, is a loose retelling of Little Red Riding Hood. And the third one that I'm in the middle of right now, Cress, is a loose retelling of Rapunzel. So I'm really enjoying that series, and that one was another 4-star read for me. The next book that I read this month was Oasis by Katya De Becerra, and this book is a really interesting, like semi-supernatural, like a realistic supernatural look at our main character Alif, who brings her friends with her to her father's dig site. He's an archaeologist outside of Dubai, and while they're there, this giant sandstorm kicks up, and while they're trying to escape from the sandstorm, they end up getting trapped seemingly further away than they should be from where they believe the camp should be. They walk for what seems like days, and they end up stumbling upon this oasis. From there, everything gets really spooky. So I ended up giving this book 3.5 stars. I really liked the main character, Alif, but I felt like the first-person perspective that it was told from didn't do it justice. There were so many characters that I would have loved to have heard more from, and we really only got to hear from our main character, Alif. Because we only got to hear from one character's point of view, I felt like there was a lot of the mystery that was left unexplored, and I'm not the kind of person that likes being left with sort of the reader gets to decide what was actually going on. And without giving too much of the ending of this one away, it does end on slightly more of that. You don't get the full story, so you don't get the concrete answer of exactly what happened, and that's a little bit frustrating for me. I know that some people really like those, and they like being left with that air of mystery and sort of being left to their own conclusions, but just personally for me, it's not one of my favorite like subtropes, and so that did knock it down a little bit for me. But overall, I think that anyone who's a fan of the Twilight Zone or that sort of supernatural, not gonna give you all the answers story would really enjoy this one. And this one actually comes out this month as well, so you can find that probably today. The next book that I read in December is Wicked Saints by Emily A. Duncan, and this one was really disappointing to me. I had sort of hyped this one up in my head as I was thinking it was going to be my new favorite fantasy series. It's a YA fantasy. I've heard it described sort of as similar to the Grishaverse. I was really excited to read this one. Up until about 2/3 of the way through the book, I was loving it. I thought this was going to be a 5-star read. Unfortunately, about 2/3 of the way through, it starts to kind of fall apart. So Wicked Saints follows our main character, Nadia, who has this uncommon ability to be able to commune with multiple gods. Within this universe, there is like a pantheon of gods. Any cleric who's able to commune with them and be granted magic from them doesn't have like actual communication with them and generally can only utilize the magic of one god. Nadia, our main character, is like out of the ordinary because she's able to commune with all of the gods in the pantheon, and they actually communicate with her. So like in her head, when she prays to them, she hears like worded responses rather than just sort of like praying and then being granted magic, which seems like what the other clerics are able to do. So in this book, we're following Nadia as she and her country is at war with the opposing country, who she calls the heretics, because they have sort of like cut the gods out of their life and they've found a way to cast magic on their own through blood magic. So what they do is they have spell books and they'll, cut themselves in some way so that they bleed, add that blood to their spell book, and then they're able to cast magic. So to the people of Nadia's country, this is blasphemous, and they're at war. So both sides are kind of trying to wipe out the other because they feel that they're right. We start off the book in Nadia's monastery as it's being attacked by the other country, and she knows that the prince of the country is one of the strongest blood mages that there are, and she finds out that he is a part of this assault, and so she tries to run away, and that sort of begins our adventure. Like I was saying, I really liked the first 2/3 of the book. I thought it had incredible potential, but unfortunately that last third just felt really rushed, and a lot of it didn't really make sense. The first 2/3 I was able to read pretty easily. There weren't any super like convoluted plot points, but that last third I found myself having to sort of reread passages to figure out what was going on, and there were a couple of character choices that just didn't feel genuine, and it leaves you with somewhat of, I mean, it leaves you with a cliffhanger, but it's not a very satisfying cliffhanger. Like some cliffhangers, they leave you with a sense of like, oh my gosh, I need to read the next book right now. But this one just kind of left me on a, like, I don't know if I'm gonna pick up the second one, and so it's a bummer that this is where we left it. It wasn't a terrible book. It had a lot going for it. I might still pick up the second one. In the end, I gave this one 3.5 stars just because I felt like enough of the book was enjoyable that I didn't want to knock it any lower than that. But the last like 100 pages or so, unfortunately, just weren't my favorite. Finally, the last book that I read in December was Perfect Little World by Kevin Wilson. And this is, or I thought was going to be one of the first books that I was reading about cults. I will give a little disclaimer here that I thought this one was about a cult, but it really isn't. It's listed on a lot of like Goodreads lists and blog lists for books that are about cults, and it, I think, would appeal to the kind of person that likes books about cults, but it's not actually about a cult. So this book follows Isabel, who is our main character, and she finds out that she's pregnant, and the father is no longer in the picture. And she really has no one. She has her father, who isn't incredibly involved in her life, even though they live together. But she just doesn't feel that she has the resources necessary to raise this child on her own. Some things happen that I don't want to give away that lead her to Dr. Preston Grind and his study. And his study is a really interesting look into what would happen if we took 10 families, it's 9 couples and then Isabel, who have had children recently, so they all have infants, and put them in a compound and had them raise these children all together as one collective family. So even though the parents know which child is biologically theirs, the children don't know which set of parents are biologically their parents, and the entire set of 19 adults cooperatively cares for these children, along with an added staff like a chef and childhood education and development experts. Essentially, they're trying to give these kids the best start they possibly can, and then study to see what would happen if they took away like the questions and the hardships from children's lives. This is met with some skepticism, some support, interest, and a lot of people, thinking that it must be a cult. But overall, this book is not about a cult. This book is about sort of just a lot of growth. Primarily, you see the growth that happens with our main character, Isabel, but you also see growth of different other characters as well. Dr. Preston Grind has an incredibly interesting backstory. Like, I want to read 3 more books about the characters in this book. It's just fascinating how well developed they are and how much you grow to really care about them and what happens to them and how they change. And it just, I put this book down and just said, wow. So this, I think I actually put it as a 4-star read on Goodreads, but as I'm like recording this and thinking about how much this book impacted me this year, I think I'm gonna have to go back and change it to 5 stars, just because it wasn't what I was expecting, but I think it was actually one of my favorite books of the year. So I really, really loved it. I think that everyone should read it, and yeah. That is it for my books in December. I had a crazy busy month with all of my holidays and family obligations, so I only read 5 books, but I think I read a good selection of books. I only had a couple that sort of let me down, and some that I really, really enjoyed. So I'm looking forward to seeing what January brings. I've already finished 2 books, one that I really enjoyed, one that I was kind of about. I'm looking forward to my readathon that starts at the end of the week, and hopefully seeing if I can vlog a little bit of that, but I also just started a new job, so we'll see how that impacts my ability to film and the time that I have to read. But for now, thank you so much for watching and subscribing. I'd really appreciate it if you'd give this video a like, subscribe, and pop down and hit that bell icon so that you can find out when I post.